Hi guys.
Welcome.
Congrats on having the hottest superhero show on TV.
Thank you. I wasn't sure what you were going to say after hottest. I was momentarily excited and then really disappointed.
I'll email you about that. It's been such a roller coaster ride, and it seems like exponential, especially the back end of the season. It seems like exponentially you guys have been through time travel, through phasing, increasing the opportunities for storytelling. Can you talk about how that will continue? Hint at how that
Yeah, whenever we do something like that or unveil it, we just feel like it's time, and time travel has always been part of the fabric of the show. I mean, from the very first episode, when you saw that newspaper. So, we don't feel like it was suddenly like, oh, we decided to do time travel. I mean, whether or not people realized it, this whole show was about time travel, and it was just that point in the season where it was time to start, giving some of those answers. I don't know. It's been fun. I mean, I think the biggest thing with Barry is not sort of taking him to full Flash mode yet. I mean, again, whether people realize it or not, they're not watching the Flash. They're really watching the Flash Begins, and so it's always been this. Measure by measure, like, him learning his powers and, his ability to time travel, that was an accident. And the phasing thing, he literally had to be talked to. There's no guarantee he could do it again and it would work. So, so it'll be fun to see, just even as he's taking these baby steps, like, how much of it he really is able to hold on to and master.
And Parallel World seems like the next logical step.
Does it?
It does. And, well, it's out there possibly. So many characters and actors have been brought over from the original Flash TV show at this point. Might we one day see a parallel world where that, where perhaps Barry's dad was the Flash, and
I don't know. I mean, at what point do you get so meta that the whole thing collapses? I don't know. I mean, look. I mean, we're always open to anything and everything. I don't want to sit here and say never, and then 2 years later go yeah. We definitely have plans, and everyone from the old show who's been on for us, it really has been a dream, and none of them have. If it was just a gimmick or like a wink and a nod to the past, I don't think any of them would work. And John Wesley Shipp is such an amazing actor, and Barry's father. I mean, it's a pivotal, important role, and you've seen the emotion that's played out. I mean, like my favorite scenes throughout this season have been those scenes with between John and Grant, especially that scene at the end of episode 12 where John just as much as told Grant that he knew he was the Flash without actually saying it, and that wouldn't have worked if John was just some bad actor who was on a bad show from 20 years ago. And, and getting Amanda back, we wanted somebody to be a really smart scientist who knew Wells, and nobody reels off that gobbledygook better than Amanda, and that beautiful British voice. And obviously getting Mark Hamill was, it was a way to connect the shows, but it was also, we don't have that kind of villain on the show. We've got a lot of very sort of like, you imagine a room where Captain Cold and the Weather Wizard and the Mist are all talking. It's like they're all tough guys, and we wanted to add a villain who was different and who was crazy and did bring a little of that flavor of the Joker, into this world. So, again, it was, as much as they are winks and nods to the past, and as much as it makes us happy as fanboys, at the same time, it really, I think every one of those choices helped elevate the show.
A couple of the rogues we know are planned for the other show that may be coming. Does that weigh into the story on the Flash? Any setup for that movement, or?
Yeah, I mean, yes, entirely. I mean, I think what you'll see on both shows is we'll be building up to the spinoff. As much as Flash and Arrow are interconnected, Flash and Arrow and the new show are going to be interconnected. So you'll be seeing, the evolution of some of these characters. And obviously, that was part of the decision to have Snart find out Barry's identity, because we knew the trajectory that those characters would be going on and how they'd be playing off of each other. And, and there's some great scenes coming up between Wentworth and Grant in episode 22. Which is further evidence of Snart's, changing character and where we'll find him in the new show.
Okay. So Arrow, I always feel, is kind of inspired by Batman, kind of the darkness in Batman. Is the Flash inspired by any kind of Superman or something like that. I feel like there's a duality involved.
We definitely talk like a little bit more about the Donner Superman. That it is sort of a little bit more hopeful and a little bit more, it certainly has a lot more humor to it. And the one thing that Donner Superman did really well was sort of really grounded in the real world. We certainly look to those. I think it's, the Flash is sort of a hodgepodge of a lot of different things, much more so than Arrow, which is, we decided to apply that Dark Knight Returns year one, Chris Nolan aesthetic to that show, and Flash really, a lot of the things that we talked about were the right stuff. Searching for Bobby Fischer, it was almost like there were less sort of superhero things that sort of went into it in an odd kind of way. We talked about Real Genius a lot, which was a movie that we all loved when we were younger, and that sort of idea of just really smart people and being able to write really smart people bouncing off of each other. The sort of superhero origins are they were sort of less in that, and then obviously the original Flash show.
With your spin-off show,
I'm
sorry. Of course.
So we see him going past accidentally.
Yes.
In the present, we have so many heroes that pop out of the woodwork. If he accidentally ever goes to the future in a future episode, will we see even more heroes in the present?
Well, we don't have any trips to the future planned per se, but there's a lot of, what'll be cool in the last half of the years. You're going to hear a lot about the future, and you're going to hear about certain people's futures. I think what's neat, that in a way is sort of more interesting than going to the future, because then it becomes a question of, well, is it true? And is this person telling you the truth? And if they are telling you the truth, can you do anything to change it? So a lot of the characters, are going to hear about where they end up, and and a lot of these last 5 or 6 episodes are going to be about, whether or not you are going to accept that or you're going to fight against it. And I think that for us, that's sort of the more interesting drama than sort of going to the future and seeing flying cars.
With the Super Team show announced, 2 quick questions. One, with Martin Stein going there and Ronnie not yet announced, fans are wondering if we're already going to see the breakup of the original Firestorm and a new Firestorm. And then 2, do you view it as a Super Team show, or since many fans are kind of hoping it's Brave and Bold gets to be the title, do you see it as a series about pairings, where we focus on 2 different heroes each week and that sort of thing?
My answers are no comment and no comment.
I had to ask anyway.
If this is too spoilery, also feel free not to comment. But the Harrison Wells that we've seen up to now, we've seen goodness in him. Is that a residual of the real Harrison Wells, or is that an act by the Reverse Flash? Are you able to say that at this point?
That is an excellent question.
I missed the question, but it's time for you to move on if you don't want to answer it.
You look shifty. My answer to that question would be that what you obviously saw what happened that night, but how that affected both Thawne and Wells will be answered throughout the course of the season.
Can you say how far ahead you guys kind of think in terms of loose plot? For example, like Wells is constantly referencing this crisis in the newspaper in the future. In your minds, have you kind of figured out what that incident is, or are you kind of leaving that undetermined so that you can sculpt it as you need to?
Some of that stuff is undetermined. Okay. Some of it was it's. No matter what show we do, whether it's been Arrow, it's been Flash, or even Supergirl, and the new show, we always have a plan. That's the best way we know how to operate. So when we're designing the pilot, I think a lot of times sometimes people design pilots and then go, well, now what are we going to do? And if you're watching Flash, you certainly hopefully see that a lot of what's paying off was set up in the pilot. It's not this sort of retroactive thing where we went backwards and said, oh, now what are we going to do? We try to do that every year on Arrow, and so there are things in there that are, that there are things that are going to happen in season 3 that we knew, if we were ever lucky enough to get this far, we would get to pay some of that stuff off. So as much we're fans of the plan, but then there's also room for interpretation. Some of that stuff that you mentioned, we actually have ideas for, and even when we have ideas for things change along the way. So.